And welcome back, everybody. I got to say that Mike and I missed everyone tremendously. This is JP Warren tuning in from Houston. We got Mike Umbro calling in from California. We are back for another Energy Facts Chats, and we apologize. It was kind of a little hiatus between the past two episodes. But hey, look, Mike and I were talking. We've been busy. We got other stuff going on. As much as
That's
we
right.
enjoy catching up with each other, unfortunately, sometimes our personal and professional lives get in the way. So we want to thank everyone for their patience. And I think this time, what are we going to talk about, Mike? We're just going to kind of catch up what we've been doing and kind of, I guess, maybe discuss kind of some future conversations that you and I'll be having on the not yet number one rated energy podcast that's out there, Energy Facts Chats. And our goal on Energy Facts Chats, as usual, is to kind of bridge the energy expectations with energy realities. Talk about kind of the energy policies and kind of the I guess the population tone when it comes to energy, and just kind of I guess bring the reality lens to that and say, okay, well, look, we're trying to do X, but what does that really mean for the environment? What does that really mean for the consumer? What does that really mean for, I guess, the materials that are going to be invested in, I guess, achieving these goals? So I'm excited to get back to the table, Mike, and hope you've been doing well, man. It's been a minute for both of us, dude.
Yeah, has it been 2 weeks? I feel like the last time we recorded an episode, it was like, well, we're going to do a catch-up episode. It's been a while, but we are busy. We're trying to get the word out. You've been all over the place. I've been all over the place. I mean, I think a good roadmap for this particular show today is to tell people what we've been doing, because a lot of times I get asked that question. What can we all do? What should we all be doing?
And a lot of
like
times,
a lot of the industry's like going everywhere.
And a lot of times too, when I mean, I'm sure your plate is kind of like mine. There's so many moving pieces, so many moving parts. Energy Fact Chats is extremely important to me. I know it's important to you, Mike. And however, there is so much stuff going on. So with your head's down in the weeds and all that stuff, I think it's important to kind of take a step back and kind of say, hey, look, okay, as your co-host, like this is kind of what we've been doing on our side. Mike, what have you been doing? And then kind of reframe it and just kind of show that we have been doing other stuff besides putting out one episode every 2.5 weeks. We want to do more than that. So why don't you tell us kind of, we'll go back and forth. So Mike, what's been on your agenda?
Well, going back, I'm trying to think. I think the last time we recorded, we talked about the price gouging issue in California and the refineries. I think that was the last one that you and I recorded. So
yes. And just kind of recap that, you were actually in Taft, right?
Oh yes, I was in Taft when that went down.
You were in Taft, and that was
from the field.
That was right after Gavin, the governor out there, kind of did it. Wasn't a tax; it was kind of a sneaky way around. That was a penalty.
Price gouging penalty. Yes,
it was a penalty because I think taxes need to be voted on and stuff like that. So it was kind of a sneaky way around. And we also discussed what that actually means. What the realities behind that. So I highly encourage y'all to kind of go back and check out that last episode we put out about the penalties for the refineries in California and why that's important for everyone out there. I mean, I think it's so. And another thing, Mike, I think it's so important. I mean, a lot of times, you and I have this conversation back and forth. Excuse me, I'm going to sip of this water.
Yeah, no problem.
That's some refreshing water. So a lot of times, you and I are talking, it's one of those things that, you're always like, I wonder if this is important. I wonder if people actually care what's going on in California. I wonder if people actually care about this. The rhetoric is don't California my Texas, don't California my Colorado. However, I think something that we are learning, that we are kind of the reality that we're living in, is that oftentimes California sets the stage for kind of what's to follow in the rest of the other 49 states when it comes to, I guess, their virtue, environmental energy policies that seem to be occurring there. And it's does anyone care what I'm doing out here, Mike? I think it's very important that people know what you're doing out there. As we talked about, California, let's just say, for example, the EV, phasing out internal combustion engines by 2030. Right. Well, that ain't going to happen to me. Well, there's probably, I think, 10 or 11 states that are closely behind launching policies that are mandates that are directly in line with California, what they're doing. So,
right. So not only that, but the Biden administration just gave the green light for California to mandate away big rigs, tractor trailers, driving all our products in and out of the port. That port complex and drivers accessing that port has to be 100% electrified, just like our vehicles we're driving as everyday people. So this is all happening very real time.
So I'm gonna stop you right there and just kind of again, I guess let's peel the onion a little bit. If I'm sitting here and I'm not, I don't really know much about the realities of energy, and I hear that, I'm thinking, well, that's a great step forward, Mike. Like that. I mean, that's a huge leap. Hey, look, it's a small piece, but that's a great step forward that we're moving into. Why are you? I guess what's the realities behind the expectation behind turning all the rig fleets to electric vehicles? Similar kind of conversations we're having when it comes to the United States military. So what's kind of the realities behind I guess what you're seeing when Washington says something like that, and what does that mean?
I think it means we're going to be set for rapid changes, and I believe it's going to drive up the cost of all of our goods. I think you're going to see. We know that electric big rigs are far more expensive than a traditional diesel
heavier
engine,
too,
or even a compressed natural gas engine. Heavier too. You've got places in California that people don't realize. Getting north from Los Angeles, you quickly go up the I-5 grade, and it's 4,000 feet. So how is that going to work with a massive tractor trailer pulling not only the weight of its batteries, but all of its cargo up and over that grade? I think there's a lot of unknowns, but I think it's going to all amount to higher costs. I don't know how that's
okay. So I think I'm going to put a pin in this right here, because I think this would be an excellent conversation for the next episode of Energy Facts.
Yeah, we can dial that in.
I say we dial that in, but again, I mean, this you're talking about electrifying the big rigs, and then you hear the Secretary of Energy talking about electrifying the United States military, and there's realities behind what those policies could entail. So let's I guess let's put a pin on that. Let's go back to that in the next episode. So again, if you want, we're going to dive into the fleet-wide electrification the next episode. So be sure to tune in. So we have that going on. So again, it's important for people to kind of keep their eye on California, because you are seeing, whether you like it or not, you are seeing these policies kind of bleed into other states, and other states kind of adapting similar playbooks that California has.
Yeah, and maybe going back to how we kicked off on refinery price gouging. So since we last spoke, I toured a refinery. The first time I've ever been invited behind the gates, drove through the refinery complex.
Well, talk to me about this. Who contacted?
Cool.
Can you tell us who contacted you, what refinery you went to, and what you learned?
Yeah, so I went through it was the Shell refinery in Martinez, Northern California. So this is a refinery complex. You have Chevron operating up there, bringing in a lot of Saudi crude. This particular refinery brings in a lot of Brazilian and heavy crude. It was an opportunity for me to get behind the gates and drive through. I was thoroughly impressed with how clean the facility is. I couldn't smell any weird smells. There were no flare stacks going. It was a very calm industrial complex. And a lot of the conversation centered around what's happening from an environmental perspective. So one of the big pushes right now by the activists, the Sierra Club, they want the refineries to reduce their particulate matter in half. And what that means is investments in larger, water cooling towers, larger filtration systems at the refineries. We're talking like $800 million to $1 billion investments into the refinery complex at a time when their short-term profits in these high profit margin windows are being scrutinized and threatened to be clawed back by the state. On the other hand, you have activists in the state saying, oh, by the way, we're going to ramp up our regulations to make it even harder for you to operate in the state. So I think we're seeing refineries, kind of wrestling with this huge, step change in how they're going to have to operate going forward.
Well, what I'm hearing about that? Okay, great. Look, let's be responsible, and of course, as an industry, as an energy industry, I feel, especially I feel like any industry in the U.S. kind of, you have regulations you have to adhere to. You have environmental
Mhm.
policies and all that stuff you have to adhere to. What's frustrating about that, you hear, Sierra Club, and I'm not that familiar with them. Um, However, it's going to be making more of a challenge for U.S.
Right.
companies to do operate business in the U.S., especially to supply something like energy and power.
Right.
However, again, this is one of those things I feel like we're screaming off the cliff, but hopefully it kind of gets heard by somebody out there. So we're going to make it harder and more difficult for companies to operate in the U.S. However, let's outsource all of our energy
Mhm.
supply, where we get it from these states and these nations where they don't really care. They don't give a shit about when it comes to environmental policy, when it comes about particulates in the air, or NOx and SOx
Right.
and all that stuff, when they're flaring. But so again, it's let's make it more difficult to operate responsibly over here as we outsource all of our waste, or whatever you want to call it, to other
Yeah.
countries, because it's not our problem. But again, when you're peeing in the pool, there's no pee. It's not like there's a no pee zone.
Yeah, and a lot of my conversation, I was asking those kind of questions. Where is this product going to come from? So China is building some massive refineries right now to take in heavy oil from these regions where they've heavily invested in the upstream operations in South America, and they will tanker that crude over to China, where China will now be responsible for refining that crude, and then they will tanker back gasoline into California. So now, instead of a crude oil product that is on these tankers, you're just going to have refined products on ththese finished products on
So
these
you're having kind
tankers.
of a double triple whammy right there.
Right,
For
you're
all
just
for
moving it all around
you're
and
moving
then
it,
bringing it
you're
into
processing
our
it.
yes.
Yeah, you're moving it, you're processing it, you're refining it, only to put it back on a huge
Right.
cargo to ship it back over. So
Right.
yes, you're
And
making it
then
more
you're at the
difficult.
whims of China for
Yeah.
if they get upset with us. What happens when they say, well, you shut down your refinery, we're just not going to send you gasoline this month. Let's see how you like that.
So that's been kind of a theme. So I've been putting together these short stories about kind of a dystopian future. Kind of the backdrop is poor energy policy, and kind of the daily struggles and of what the characters have to go through. So the really short stories,
Yep.
you can find them on www.connectioncrew.com under the blog, and they're labeled with years 2034, 2084, all
Mhm.
that stuff.
Mhm.
And that was kind of one of the sci-fi themes of it. Is as a Western nation, we preach about this move forward. I mean, is it really
Mhm.
moving forward? If you start, peeling the onion, it's not.
Mhm.
We talk about this. So if we're asking for, these energy supplies from China, from these BRIC nations, and all that stuff,
Right.
and at the same time, at the other side of our mouth, when we're talking to the population here, we're saying, oh, oil's bad, fossil fuels are horrible, hydrocarbons suck, da 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 da.
Mhm.
One of the themes is these developing nations, or these BRIC nations, saying, you know what, for a country that's so reliant on what we're providing you, you constantly talk it down, you constantly smack talk it. We're going to put an oil embargo on the U.S. And that
Mhm.
kind of shows kind of like, yeah, you can preach it, but I mean, you're kind of at the whims of this energy product at the end of the day. So you're
Right.
right. You are kind of at the whims of how nice other governments are playing with the U.S. when it comes to energy.
And we lose oversight over the process as well, and that's the most
What do you
concerning
mean?
part from an environmental standpoint. Well, from an environmental standpoint, at least if you've got refineries in California, they're held to very strict standards, and you
Right.
don't know that that exists over in China or other countries, and you don't know whether that exists in the upstream production of crude oil and natural gas. So I think it's really concerning. Whereas when you see pushing alternatives, solar, wind,
We don't
electrification of the
care
grid,
where, yeah.
we are encouraging that to be happening here. And so that same philosophy applies no matter what the energy source is. You should be having oversight over it. You should be doing it domestically where you have transparency to the process. And
It's
that's my biggest concern is we're just outsourcing it to these other places and saying, well, just bring me the finished good. I'm going to
as
pretend
long as it's
that's the
not
only
done
fact.
here.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's kind of like highly processed foods and all that stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
I think a good way to look at it is like, look, if you're going out to a restaurant, you're paying a cost for like whether it's a steak, whether it's whatever it is, vegetables,
Right.
whatever kind of floats your boat. It's one of those things is you don't want a highly processed. You want to know where it comes from, what's behind. I mean, some people
Right.
do when they're making decisions when with what they're consuming. I mean, same thing as
Sure.
what your house is consuming when it comes to energy. You
Yeah.
don't want a highly processed,
Right.
refined, synthetic product that you don't know what was involved in the steps behind it to get this to market. You'd rather have
Right.
something local. Rather have something where you know where it came from.
Right, right. And this is a good segue. So the other thing I did, so the day before I was touring the refinery, I was in Sacramento testifying for Senator Shannon Grove, state senator out of Kern County. She has a
Is
bill
that the
called
doctor?
No, she's not a doctor. That's
Okay.
Jasmeet Bains, assemblywoman, who's a doctor.
Okay.
But Senator Grove has a bill, SB 15, that wants to track the emissions leakage that happens when we outsource our production of crude oil, as well as the human rights abuses per the US State Department going on in these other foreign countries. And this bill really does nothing to impose a tax or anything on those foreign products. What it says is the California Energy Commission must report on its website what the emissions profile of those countries are and what the human rights scores of those countries are. So at the very least, the consumer knows what they're buying, what they're signing up for. So that was a first for me. I was
Now,
able to testify in front of the Senate Committee for Energy, Utilities, and Communications in Sacramento for 2 minutes. That's all they give you.
all right. First off, I want to talk about that, but I kind of
Yeah.
want to pause real quick and kind of I guess frame this in my mind. Okay, so
Yeah.
first off, this sounds like in the world we live in today, transparency is extremely important. Correct? Like where
Yes.
you're sourcing your
Yes.
materials.
Right.
Whether it's your an Apple phone or your Nike shoes, I feel like transparency is extremely important.
Right.
I feel, and look, this is again speculation. This whatever. It's our thing. No one listens, so I'm gonna have this conversation with you. It would appear that
Someone's listening.
yeah, you and me are. It appears that, and again, there might be stupid questions, but again, that's why I enjoy these conversations because I learn a lot. It would appear that something like this would be hailed as okay. Finally, we got transparency on this company.
Right.
I would assume, though, if I was a politician and I know about this stuff, and I feel like politicians, they hold cards close to their chest. I would assume as a politician and you represent the people, you'd be like, oh, absolutely. We need something
Right.
like this. We're all on board. However, that would not hold, I guess, my interests at bay, whatever that is. So I guess what is the feedback coming from the politicians? I mean, I would assume this would be all on board, but I'm not
Yep.
sure. I guess in reality, politicians obviously like helping themselves out and helping their
Right.
interested parties at. So is there any kickback on this? Is there any like I guess people trying to not have this type of reporting occur?
Well, it got 11 aye votes and no nays, so it went
Okay, good.
good through that committee. The last time she pushed this bill last year, similar bill, it died in the appropriations committee. So to your point, I think what I see, I'm a novice to how all this works in Sacramento, but I see the last time it happened, it went to appropriations where they have to account for the potential for increased costs to implement a policy. That's what happens in the appropriations committee. What's this going to cost us? And last year they said, hey, it's going to cost us 2 full-time positions to make this a reality. So it's going to cost us $250,000 to make this a reality. It just kind of, the session ended and it died last year. So she brought it back this year. Now it will go back to appropriations where somehow I'm surprised that this is going to cost 2 full-time staff because a lot of this data is public already. A lot of the data I used to support the bill was from the EIA. So a lot of it is already publicly reported data. But I fear that in appropriations, they will do the same thing. They'll say, hey, it's going to be too costly to implement. We don't have this in the budget, so we can't.
So, okay. So the fear is that this is again get to, hey, what's this going to cost us? So rather than highlight the policies are very, I guess, environmental forward, or at least that's what they're
Yeah.
saying in California. So this policy that's going to, I guess, highlight or have focus on actual environmental effects of
Right.
foreign imported oil, they're going to say, you know what, that's $250,000. We're good. Instead, let's do X, Y, and Z and maybe subsidize that and probably print out
Right.
more money, give out to more consumers versus kind of exposing or highlighting the environmental results from this energy source from foreign
Right.
countries.
Yeah.
Doesn't
And
make any
maybe
sense.
I know it doesn't make any sense. And maybe who knows? Maybe she can write something into the bill that says somehow the industry is going to cover the cost, because I think it would be value. I mean, it's really a
And that's fine.
small amount of money.
So,
Yeah.
so to me, again, this has the in theory on paper, yes, this is exactly what we need. But however, when it comes to the politicians saying, well, we don't, if we do that, then we're going to have to promote domestic production because we do a lot better. So let's
Yeah.
try to see where this falls, or let's see how we can kind of shit the bed with this policy.
Yeah, and I think it's great that she's pushing it forward and forcing the conversation, and we just need to keep having that light shine on this problem, and eventually I think, we will find ways to pay for these things. I think eventually the industry can come together and say, hey, we'll pay for it. Or maybe there's a way to marry this whole price gouging deal and say, hey, you're gouging us over here. At the very least, we're going to include the mandate that you report on these issues. And maybe there's always an out. What I'm learning in the political world, there's always a workaround, and
Right.
I guess we need to just push it into the light.
So my thing is this. I mean, I'm trying to think, 2 steps down the road. Okay, let's say this does get passed. Let's say it makes it through the appropriations committee and all that stuff. Okay, let's say this is out there. Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
reports are coming in, kind of showing kind of confirming what you already know.
yeah.
How will this be used when it comes to domestic energy? Will this be kind of like, oh, I told you we got to get off? But then again, reality is the way society and the systems are set up is that demand. You can mandate
Yeah.
production outside your state as much as you can, but that's not going to change the demand of the quality of living that people in California
Right,
and the U.S. enjoy. So
right.
my thing is this: how will this affect, I guess, domestic limelight, domestic production, domestic energy? Should it be implemented?
I think it'll open up an opportunity for the industry, but the industry also has a lot of work to do for itself to start, you know, repolishing that social license to operate. I think we've done a terrible job, and a
Yeah.
lot of it is the major companies, whether it's, I think the two big things are idle wells and gas flaring. Not gas flaring in California, more the idle wells in California. So I think the operators, the majors, need to fix that idle well backlog. They have to get to a point where there are very few idle wells, so that when we do have a policy in place that says, hey, we're going to track the emissions leakage, they can then go to the everyday consumer and say, look, we've remediated all of these legacy environmental issues. We've cleaned our room, we've done our homework, we've eaten our dinner, and now we're asking you, the people, to be able to drill in XYZ locations that are away from people's homes, that are in the right areas to produce. So I think it's just one small step of many that have to be taken with the industry to get our social license back, because we've lost it.
So, we're okay. So you see as idle wells being kind of low hanging fruit, but it's still a challenge to and for those that don't know, can you
Yeah.
explain real quick what idle wells are and kind of why that's a hot topic?
So idle wells are those that are effectively not economic any longer. They're
Oil and
not
gas
they're
wells.
not producing. They turn them off. There's no production to report, and over a period of time, they become idle wells.
Okay.
And so if you're
So
not
what does that
producing
mean?
it,
Once they
they
turn
just
idle wells,
they go on a list, and then the operator is supposed to abandon these wells. Well, what's
okay.
happened? There's been a lack of enforcement on the agency side. Historically, this is going back 30 plus years. There's been a lack of enforcement. So this backlog has grown to 37,000 idle wells in California. And 30,000 of those idle wells are owned by three major operators, Chevron, era, which was Shell and Exxon, CRC, which was Oxy. And so that is constantly used as a talking point by an activists and those in Sacramento that don't want oil and gas to exist in California as, hey, look at over there. You're not taking care of your problems. So we're not going to issue you permits because you can't take care of your problems when you have idle wells. You don't put these issues to bed.
Okay. So let me ask you a question, though. It seems like this is kind of low-hanging fruit. Obviously, this is one of those things where it's going to cost some capital to, plug and abandon these idle wells. Pretty much that means kind of cap them off to make sure they're not making any. So that's pretty much, making them dead wells, pretty much.
Right.
Where are you seeing, I guess, the conversation when it comes to the big oil companies out there? Where are you seeing, I guess, this kind of this kind of enter the realm of table discussions?
I think it's pushed aside and ignored, sadly.
Still?
Yeah, I think the operators give lip service. Oh, we're abandoning 1,000 wells a year. But I think what the industry needs to do is look at what the environmental activists do and look at how they approach these issues, and then look at how Sacramento typically approaches these issues. They make big, bold statements, big, bold goals. We're going to phase out ICE vehicles by 2035. Why can't the industry come together and say, we're going to phase out idle wells by 2026, 2028, some really aggressive goal, because it's not going to go away. You're not going to ignore this. So the industry, I think, is doing itself a disservice by kicking that can down the road. And so that's what, I think it's important for us to be introspective and look at the problems that the industry's had moving back and fix them. Point blank, just fix them. Because we need to have some momentum to gain back the social license to operate in whatever state you're in. And I think in Texas, that issue is flaring. I think flaring needs to go away. It's 80 times more potent than CO2 in terms of methane as a heat trap in the atmosphere. Yet we see, carbon capture projects be talked about. The industry is going to spend X billions capturing carbon when you could spend.
Was that Oxy?
Oxy, on 60 Minutes last night. And it's like, what a grift. Like, what a grift. You're capturing carbon. On the one hand, your job is to produce barrels of carbon, of oil, right? And so you're telling me you're going to maximize your output of carbon over here in this hand. And then I'm going to capture a tiny fraction of that in these atmospheric vacuums on this other hand. And then I'm going to pump it downhole for CO2 enhanced oil recovery to make more barrels of carbon. All the while, I have massive gas flares going in the Permian Basin. And it's like, I get it. Wall Street wants PR. They want positive PR. But as an industry, we're doing ourselves a disservice. This does not gain us favor with the activists. If anybody saw that 60-minute interview last night, the folks doing direct air capture in Iceland, they don't want anything to do with oil and gas companies. So Oxy might get this one direct air capture project off the ground, but very quickly after, every activist is going to shut down the ability for oil and gas companies to do direct air capture for CO2 EOR. It's very easy to see that coming. They said it in the interview. We do not want an oil and gas industry to exist in 20 or 30 years. Point blank, they do not want it to exist. And so we're flirting with this game of we want PR, but we don't want to fix our legacy issues because it costs money. It doesn't make us money. We don't get $85 a ton for sequestering carbon. Sorry, I'm getting.
I'm digging this, baby.
But it's all sleight of hand in order to avoid environmental legacy liabilities.
I'm actually the reason why I look down. I'm actually jotting down these topics. I think talking about electronic fleets, and I think talking about this carbon capture and kind of the 60 Minutes last night would be two great episodes to get into.
Yeah,
and combine.
Let's do it this week.
I'm down for that this week. So
let's do it.
Yeah. So I guess let's wrap it. We're coming on 29 minutes right now. These are probably about half an hour each. So what else has been going on in your world?
So the final thing I did, well, not the final, but another big thing I did the past 2 weeks, I went to UC Berkeley. I was given the opportunity to give a seminar in front of about 25 students of the Biofuels Technology Club. My student ambassador, Joseph Sylvie, who's a UC Berkeley student and working with us at Californians for Energy and Science, set it all up. 25 people, pizza, 2-hour seminar doing the holistic cost benefit analysis of where we get our energy from if we don't produce it in California. So I'm really stoked on that.
I mean, that sounds, first off, that I love the opportunity whenever I'm connecting with soon to be professionals. I mean, Kids Crew.
Yeah, Kids Crew.
I love
you do it.
I love connecting. Whether it's children, whether it's soon to be professionals, whether it's current professionals and all that stuff. So whenever you have, I guess, a group, around that age, about to enter the workforce and all that stuff. What was how was that for you? What was the conversations like? I mean, this is a good way to wrap it up. I'm kind of curious to kind of hear how first off how you did. I'm sure you crushed it, but how you did, but also kind of the conversations that occurred around the table after that.
It was amazing. I thought it was great. The students there, not one picked up their phone for 2 hours. The opposite of what you think. Just dialed in, listening, asking questions. These students at Berkeley are for real. They want to learn. And I think the coolest thing after the seminar wrapped up, hour, 40 minutes, whatever, we're all just hanging out after, a student came up to me and said, you know what, I wasn't going to come to this because I knew it was going to be about oil and gas, and effectively I don't like oil and gas. I was not going to show up, but he said, I'm glad I did, because there's a lot more to this than what I thought, basally. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he was happy that he came.
But I love that, because at the end of the day, that is the only thing that's my goal here on Energy Facts Chat,
right?
Is to show the realities behind the energy expectations, and that conversation is so impactful for me. And I dig that. I really love hearing that feedback.
Yeah, it was cool. It was really cool. And I think that's something to close on, takeaways from the industry, because I feel a lot of the industry is kind of going every other direction. We're lost. We don't know how to get our favor back with the public. But I think it just takes one conversation at a time. You don't know if one of these young kids is going to be the founder of some multi-billion-dollar company that has a voice, and then instead of hating oil and gas, says, hey, you know what, we need to do it here, or whatever. We just don't know who we're talking to and how powerful those conversations can be unless we're having them. So
that's an excellent point. I mean, kind of, I gave a talk about, Energy Education Foundation, about industry advocacy. And it's one of those things where it's not a question of fighting with dad. It's not a question. I mean, this is, when it comes to conversational side of things, not, putting together those reports. But again, it's just having realistic conversations, because just like that student that came to you saying, oh, I don't want anything to do with oil and gas, and all that stuff. I get that. I get why you're coming to the table with that perception. However, the fact you're here willing to listen and engage and have conversations, you start understanding the intricacies of hydrocarbons in modern society and energy in modern society. So I love how that feedback happened. I appreciate that. I think we're probably getting close on time. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to Energy Facts Chats with me, JP Warren, and Mike Umbro, tuning in. And I think we got a couple good things for the next episode or two that I'm excited that I jotted down that we're going to talk about. So I appreciate it, Mike, and I want everyone out there to have a good time. Spread the energy realities versus energy expectations, and just start having conversations with people. Know where your energy is coming from. I think one cool tool is that Mike introduced me to was this, and again, this is kind of a sidebar, but one fun thing is called an app called Electricity Maps, and that kind of you can kind of look all over the world on what the sources of electricity for your state, for countries, and all that stuff, where it comes from. It's a really cool app. It kind of shows you light on electricity realities and energy realities. So that's just one fun place to start. But anyway, I appreciate everyone tuning out there, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one. Be sure to subscribe and share this if you enjoyed it.